Oh, thank you, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're all doing well. I am so honored to have you all here today joining us for this important discussion on race and storytelling. And it's a kickoff for us on an ongoing series of live stream conversations focused on race and storytelling from multiple perspectives. I actually believe that we are at a crossroads. And finally, I hope we are at a point where we can make lasting change. But you know, change is not something that's given. It's something we have to fight for. Sometimes incrementally, sometimes boldly, sometimes on the streets, sometimes on social media, sometimes in boardrooms and on sets. So today we invited guests to help us look at the way the world is changing and to amplify the voices and experience of Black people in the entertainment industry and to have an urgent and honest conversation about the systemic biases in our own front yard. SAG-AFTRA is engaged in promoting diversity, equal employment, and non-discrimination, but I know we can and we must do more. So we're listening, and we're working through our member diversity committees and our equity and inclusion departments to be a part of the solution, because it will take all of us, make no mistake. So before we get started, I just want to say thank you to our Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon. Hi, Rebecca.
Hey.
Welcome. And our Secretary Treasurer, Cameron Mannheim. So nice to meet you, Cameron. Thank you for being here with us.
Of course.
I also want to thank in advance my friend and partner in SAG-AFTRA. He's our National Executive Director, David White, and he's joining us today on the panel. Nice to see you, David. All right. So for today's program, I'm very excited, first of all, to welcome my friend and today's moderator, Jason George. Now, you know him as Dr. Ben Warren, first on Grey's Anatomy and now on Station 19. He's been a series regular on 10 different primetime shows, God bless him. He's done over 50 guest star roles and starred in films like Barbershop, Breaking In, and Playing for Keeps. And what you may not know about Jason is that he also is fighting for us, for each and every one of you in the union as a volunteer leader. He is a SAG-AFTRA National Board member, and he chairs our National Diversity Advisory Committee, which facilitates collaboration and communication between the union's 7 diversity committees. Jason regularly speaks about inclusion and diversity. In fact, we've had many a conversation on this topic, and I have learned a great deal. I am sure I will continue learning. I thank you for that. And for the past 15 years, he has been part of the negotiating team for our TV theatrical new media contract. He is a dedicated union member and a leader, and we are very grateful for his services, union of 160,000 members, and I am grateful for his friendship. He is a passionate advocate for social justice, common sense gun laws, and better representation. Cannot think of a better moderator for today's discussion, Jason George.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was a humbling introduction, and I will try and do the same level of justice to all of our panelists. I'm very proud to be moderating this conversation, and I'm proud of my union for hosting a conversation that is bringing into our world the conversation that's happening all across our country, that's happening in the streets, that's happening in homes across America, that's happening in workplaces, and that we hope is happening in state capitals and in Washington, D.C. But we're going to bring that conversation into Hollywood because it's all about Hollywood at the end of the day. So let me first introduce all of our panelists. Here we have someone who's near and dear to my heart, Mr. Paris Barclay. Paris Barclay, besides directing Station 19, where I work with him on the regular, he's one of television's most successful and honored directors. He has 2 Emmy Awards for NYPD Blue, another 6 nominations for producing and directing. He's worked on every show across the spectrum. He also directed the film Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. He also was the president of the DGA, the Directors Guild, but not only was he the president, he was the first African-American and the first openly gay of the DGA. So welcome, Paris Barclay. And then we have my friend, Yvette Nicole Brown.
Oh, it's me.
Yes, that's you. That is you. Everybody will recognize from Community. She's been in so many different productions. But she's also become an incredible voiceover actress. This is something that I didn't realize because I don't watch Elena of Avalor or Pound Puppets. My kids have gotten too old. But for all of you who have children out there, your kids will know who she is, or at least recognize her voice. She's also about to be on Disney Plus in the game show The Big Fib.
On right now.
It's on right now. And upcoming is Big Shot with John Stamos. And then also I want to give a shout out because you got an Emmy, an Image Award nomination for a romantic comedy you wrote that's on Netflix called Always a Bridesmaid.
Yay.
Good on you getting your hype in it all. Getting your hype in.
Thanks, brother.
Next is a man that I have to say is, certainly I don't even know if you remember that we worked together years ago.
Of course I do.
Sterling K. Brown. Sterling K. Brown played opposite me on Eli Stone a million years ago, and I knew this brother was going to be somebody incredible because you actually beat my brother out for the role. And I had to tell my own brother, hey, man, he's good. He's really, really good. But everybody today knows him from This Is Us, of course, where he has gotten, I'm gonna run the list. He's gotten the Screen Actors Guild Award. He's gotten the SAG Award, an Emmy, a Golden Globe, the NAACP Image Awards for this role, many others. He's the first Black actor to win a Golden Globe in the Best Performance by an Actor in a Drama Series. He's been on countless productions and films, and he has recently also getting his hype on. He's producing, and his production company, Indian Meadows, is attached to produce dramas like Everyday Insanity for Fox, Washington Black for 20th Century Fox, and they're working on a film called Shadow Force, where Sterling and Kerry Washington are set to star. So Sterling K. Brown.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next up is my friend Michelle Hurd. Michelle, in addition to having the best hair of any actor I know, stars opposite Patrick Stewart on Picard, which is in and of itself for all of us Trekkies a phenomenal thing. She's also going to be seen soon in Justin Simeon's film Bad Hair, which premiered at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival. So that's one of the film festivals that actually managed to happen this year. So be on the lookout for Bad Hair. She had an explosive performance in Blind Spot and done countless other performances. And she's also a fellow national board member along with Yvette and myself. Welcome, Michelle.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
I think Jason's freezing.
He should come back.
You froze for a second there, honey.
I said, if you are a Black actor in Hollywood, you know exactly who Robi Reed is. She's an Emmy-winning casting director for the last 30 years, which I'm looking at you, I don't believe it, with over 50 movies under her belt. But since 2010, Robi has been BET's Vice President of Talent and Casting for Original Programming. And she's overseen some projects you may have heard of, like The Game, Being Mary Jane, or The Real Husbands of Hollywood. I've heard of those shows. She has been a casting director on so many films and TV shows like Soul Food, The Best Man, ladies and gentlemen, Robi Reed.
Hi.
And last up, my captain, David White, the National Executive Director of SAG-AFTRA. If it has SAG-AFTRA in its title, he is on the board or he is a trustee of it, including the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, the health plan, the producer's pension plan, the retirement fund. And in addition to being part of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, he's also on the Motion Picture and Television Fund and the Actors Fund. He's also a board member of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, and he is an incredible advocate. He's also a commissioner for the Industry Commission on Eliminating Sexual Harassment and Advancing Equality in the Workplace. David White, Rhodes Scholar too, am I correct, sir?
You are correct.
Yeah.
Yes, for whatever it's worth.
You're humble. You're humble. You didn't put that on here, but I know that. I know that. So thank you all for joining us for the panel today.
Yes.
It's like I said, it's an important conversation that's happening in a myriad of ways across our country, and I'm glad that we have a chance to bring it to our section of the country, to bring it to the people who actually put images out in the world for a living and tell stories for a living. And so I want to make sure we have a very frank, very real conversation. But I want to tee it up first. Gabrielle, you were talking about how we've been good friends for many years now, and you told me a story once, and I was wondering if you would share it here about the time that you were doing the circus performance. I wonder if you could share that story with everyone real quickly, and then I'll tell you why.
Okay, so yeah, we have been around for a long time, haven't we, Jason? So the story I was sharing, and Alfonso Ribeiro and I was on Circus of the Stars. It was quite a while ago, but in that I was on the High Wire Act, and Alfonso had to carry me on his shoulder on a pole. It was a very, very challenging act with a lot of tricks. At the end of it, we did the run through for the network, and it was a phenomenal show. But then at the end of it, when I got off the pole, I went and I hugged Alfonso. And they came up to me later and they said, Gabrielle, that was an amazing show. That was wonderful. When we go live tomorrow, just make sure you don't hug Alfonso. And I said, why? And they said, well, middle America, they won't like that. I was actually, and I'm telling this story when Jason and I talked about this, because it's really the perpetuation of racial bias that exists outside of just not people experiencing, but being forced to actually perpetuate themselves. So they said they didn't want me to hug him. And that I went to Alfonso after and I said, you can't believe what they just said to me. They don't want me to hug you. So I want you to know tomorrow when we go live, I'm gonna hug you. And so I did. We did the show, and at the end, I got off the pole and I hugged him and I gave him a kiss. And for me, that was a really an important moment. There are so many times in this industry when we're told what we're supposed to do, and sometimes we know that's just not the right thing to do. It was not organically correct. It wasn't just, and it wasn't fair. And I couldn't say it to them, because if I said it, they would have just found another way to block it or cut it out. So I just agreed and then did what I wanted to do. And I will never regret that moment.
Thank you. I'm glad you did. I wanted you to share that story, and you touched on it a bit, because I think you got a very firsthand, very blunt education. And I think the reason why we're having this conversation is because we're trying to educate folks, because people who are people of color know some of the information, much of the information. They live this experience. But for people who are not people of color, I think we're trying to educate them in terms of what our experience has been in Hollywood, in the workplace, living in this country. And once you become aware of it, once you're given a very blunt example of it in front of you, once that implicit bias, that unconscious bias, you become conscious of the unconscious bias that other people have in the workplace, or that you yourself have, you have a choice. You can either be a bystander, say nothing, and therefore be complicit in maintaining that implicit bias, or you can actually be an ally and say something and give the hug. Thanks for sharing that, Gabrielle. I know we've talked about it before, but I wanted people to hear that, because I think it's important to hear that there's a role for allies to play. But this conversation is about Black actors, about Black Hollywood writers, producers. So I wanted to share that to tee it up, but then I want to turn to the panel and actually ask the question. Like Gabrielle's, like that experience, we've all had it. And so a moment where that flashpoint where you went to work hoping to just be a good actor, hoping to be the best actor that you could be, and circumstances forced you to deal with the considerations that come with being a Black actor. And suddenly you have to think about things that other actors don't have to deal with. You have to consider things that other actors have to deal with. I mean, just say, by way of example, for me, two quick examples. One of the first shows I ever did, there were no writers of color in the writer's room, but I remember one of the producer writers talking to me about how we're gonna work for you, we're gonna be here for you, we're gonna support you, don't worry. We have the slang dictionary and we have the urban dictionary, so we got you. These are true stories. These are true stories, and it's not a million years ago. I'm not old enough for this to have been 1950. The other example I will give you is one time I was doing a movie. I was the lead of the film. It was an independent movie, and it was about mountain climbing. And I am Black. I was a mountain climber. I walked in the trailer, and I saw there a Caucasian man wearing my wardrobe, my costume, and they were putting makeup on him to darken his skin so that he could be my stunt double. Stunt world, in the stunt world, they call that a paint down. And it's actually how my union activism started. I got involved with the union. I think David was there actually back then. He left us for a couple of years and then came back as our top executive. And I remember we negotiated and got language into the contract to try and prevent that from ever happening to another actor. But the interesting thing is that it's like addiction or health, mental health maintenance, you never solve the problem. You got to manage the problem. Because 10 years later, I believe Jada Pinkett Smith had the exact same issue. And a few years after that, somebody else had the issue. So those are just examples, but they're big examples, and they're also the microaggressions. I was wondering if some of you could share those moments when you couldn't just be an actor, but you had to deal with the considerations that come with being a Black actor. And I'm going to start with my friend Yvette Nicole Brown.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us and being a part of this. I think that me and Michelle can probably tag team this, because I'm going to start with the fact that you can't just be a Black actress. You have to also be a Black hairstylist and a Black makeup artist. Yeah. We have been fighting this fight for as long as I've been in the industry to make sure that the people that are in the makeup and hair trailer actually know how to do Black hair and Black faces. I did not say they have to be Black people. I just said they have to have a proficiency at doing Black hair and Black faces, because that does not exist for the most part in our industry. And because the ones that do have that proficiency are always working, every Black actress that has worked in this industry has had to do her own hair and makeup at some point in her career. And that is a Black tax, a Black toll that is added to our day. We have to get up an extra 2 hours to make sure that we look presentable for the camera. We have to bring our entire bags of hair or foundations. I've never gone to a set without my foundation. Even as a series regular, I take my foundation because I never know who's going to be there that day, if something's going to go wrong and I have to fix something. And I've seen my white female counterparts arrive on the set with wet hair, fresh out of the shower. Yeah. And they sit down with no fear or concern that they are going to look camera ready in the hour it takes to get them together. I have never walked on set with wet hair. I never will walk on set with wet hair. Mm-hmm. So Michelle, would you like to join in on this conversation, sis?
Oh, girl, you talking about my hair now, this is the truth though. I don't know if everybody understands this, because it seems like it seems like something that should just happen naturally, that when you hire somebody of a different color, that you have someone who's representative of that and can take care of you in your hair and makeup room. It's interesting, Jason, you said, what situations have you experienced? For women of color, we experience it as soon as we walk into the hair and makeup room. I mean, we don't even have, we're not even on set yet, and we have to have a discussion. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a hair and makeup trailer and had this kind of expression. Well, oh my, you have a lot of hair. I mean, yeah, so figure it out. I was on a show. I was on a very well-known show a few years ago, and I was cast to do an arc, like a 7-episode arc, and I shot the first day. By the way, I look like this when I'm cast. I don't do anything different. There's not like I wear something different. This is how I look. And I present it this way on purpose, because we girls with curly, crazy hair, all of us ladies who have such beautiful different textures and different volume, that's what should be beautiful, as opposed to trying to silence that. But I shot this one day, and I was here in LA, and in my car, and all of a sudden I get a little phone call, and it's from the producers, and they're like, "Hi, Michelle, it's the producers, and we'd like to chat with you." Now, as an actor, like after you shoot one day and you have a phone call from the producers, it's a little, scary. You might be like, "That's it, like, thank you so much," but no. And I thought, what did I do in one day that sucked? And they literally said this to me, and I want you people to hear this. They actually said to me, "We love your hair. It's so pretty. But what we've done some research, and we found out that in our research," because my character was the owner of a business, "we found that in our research, a woman of color can't own a business unless she has straightened hair." Now, I'm gonna try to keep myself from cussing here because I'm a New Yorker, but that is some bullshit.
I was gonna say, it never stopped you before. It never stopped you before.
And this, you have to think about the impact of the artist. So now I know when I go to work tomorrow, there has been a discussion. There has been a discussion from producers, writers, network, studio, that this is a problem. That we can no longer stand for. We all look and have such organic, innate beauty. We don't need to be homogenized into one type of beauty.
Amen. Amen.
Say that, girl. Say it.
Sterling, go ahead.
Just to that end, like, really excited that, first of all, the medium can be used in a couple of different ways. We can hold a mirror up to society to show it as it is. and then we can also point it in the direction that it needs to go, right? And so I'm really happy that my TV wife, Susan Kelechi Watson, changes her hair like every episode of This Is Us. And I think that shit is kind of fire. I also just wanted to point out like a microaggression, like to that end of like not actually being on set, but in terms of how we are perceived. I remember doing Army Wives, and we would do a poster every year for the show. And I was technically one of the Army Wives. I was like the civilian spouse, kind of nerdy, hanging out with all these ladies. And not that I wanted to be on the poster, but I was curious. I was like, I'm an Army wife. How come I can't be on this poster? And the guy who was the head of like marketing and advertising goes, what would it look like if we put a black man on a poster with 4 white women? And I was like, bro, you're not dressing me like a pimp named Slipback. Like, I don't understand what exactly we're talking about here, but like that was what came out of his mouth. I'll be quiet now so somebody else can.
That was fabulous.
Hey, Jason, I got one.
Paris, please.
My favorite, not primarily an actor, but I actually go to work. And I'm driving into the Warner Brothers lot, and I have a great affection for security guards. Not at all. That said, you know, I'm in my directorial uniform, which is a t-shirt and a baseball cap, and the security guard takes my ID and he says, what are you dropping off?
Oh,
yep. I said, what? And he said, what are you delivering? And I said, I am delivering my services to ER as a director. And he said, oh. And then he waited and I waited and he checked and he finally let me in to go to my parking space right next to the stage where ER, the #1 show on television, was being produced. So I immediately go to John Wells and I tell him this. John writes a scathing 3-page letter to Warner Brothers, and all of them are put through sensitivity training from that point on. And they never got much better, I must say. Nevertheless, there was an effect of that. And it's just like microaggression, macroaggression. Microaggression becomes macroaggression like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's all the little droplets become a pool of the implicit bias. But I wonder if Robi or David, I wonder if you can speak to it from your perspectives. I mean, Robi, most of Black Hollywood has come through your office at some point in time. And so many of us owe some of the high points of our career to you.
Or the beginnings of our careers,
right?
To her.
But you had to, what has it been like for you? Because you are one of the top casting directors in the industry, period. But I'm wondering, when you have to deal with the considerations of being the Black casting director, if there's anything like that in your career early on.
Yes, well, it definitely happened early on in my career. I have been doing this a long time, and my background was certainly in projects that were not African American. And so for a couple of years until I met Spike Lee and was hired to cast School Days, and from that point on, I only got offered projects that had predominantly African American casts. And so to me, I was like, I'm a casting director, I know talent, consider me for all things. And every studio, every network, they wanted to work with me, but when those mainstream projects became available, those were never given to me. So for a long time, I fought that. And then after a while, accepted the blessing that I had by being the casting director for African American projects, the fact that we had them, and that I could maintain a career doing that. It was a blessing. But yes, I definitely ran into that as well.
You know, Mr. White, David White, you live in rarefied air because, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know of another Black national executive director of a major Hollywood union.
That's correct.
And I don't know if you're the first, but you're the first one that I've had to deal with. So I'm wondering how it plays into the rooms that you're in, because more than any of the rest of us, we all may be part of, you know, at varying degrees of closeness to the center of individual production. You go into the room and talk with and sometimes negotiate opposite in the room where it happened. I mean, where it goes down, where decisions are made for the entire industry. Speak to that, sir.
What I would add to the great stories that have already been mentioned, and I've had microaggressions against me, as an example, going to a closed event with a series of other executives and someone there introducing me to a large group of people and talking to me, believing that I was Isaiah Washington or someone else who is Black, who is front of center of their mind. That's kind of an unbelievable, you know, it's so otherworldly that you would think that I, you know.
You get that too? You get that too?
We all,
Oh, yeah.
we all got that.
I mean, by the way, I'm Isaiah Washington. Come on now.
Hey, take the win. Take the win, David. Take the win.
Yeah, exactly. But what I hit mostly is structural racism. So I am frequently the only Black executive in a room. Now in Hollywood, unlike in some other places where I've worked, people tend to see themselves as progressive. They tend to see themselves as liberal. So in those rooms, there are many efforts to avoid the microaggressions. What you hit are the macroaggressions. The only Black exec yesterday, the only Black exec today. When there's a conversation that seems like to the room, it does not have a racial component, my responsibility then is to raise the racial component. So that can be as easy as, oh, we're in a pension plan meeting and we're talking about our investment advisors. So who are we bringing in to interview, to see whether or not they're going to be our investment advisor? Do we have Black candidates? Do we have diverse candidates? And, you know, we have talked about this being race and we've talked about being people of color. In this moment, when we are focused on Black Lives Matter, I just want to emphasize, for me, there are always at least two components. It's always, I'm not going to dilute what's going on with Black people. The Black community and Black people have a very unique, particular relationship to the state here in the United States. There is also a conversation about people of color. There is also a conversation about diverse groups, et cetera. So long as that conversation doesn't dilute those moments when we need to focus on what it means to be Black American, I'm good with that. I'm always sort of working on that level, but those are the moments where I find it doesn't matter how articulate I become in explaining the need to add an additional element to bring in someone who is either Black or someone who is of color or a woman, et cetera. It always eventually runs into a very nice, neutralized no. And every time it doesn't run into that, that's considered a real victory. And at some point, the energy behind my voice then isolates me from the rest of the group, because it becomes why are you being so, I'm not trying to be offensive, David. Why are you getting angry? This isn't an angry conversation. And as you know, I'm not being angry. I'm just making sure that this cuts through the clutter, that the voice cuts through the clutter. So I find that is the responsibility of raising the issue, the responsibility of finding opportunities to bring in additional voices, additional talent, additional opportunities for Black people and for people of color is where I run into it all the time. So it's isolating, but I also recognize that it's a privilege to be there. And then for that privilege, I have the responsibility of bringing it up. But we hit that all the time, which is why even in today's age, we still have very few executives that don't look like the executives of the last generation, which is astonishing and ridiculous.
And you're heading in the direction exactly where I wanted to go. I mean, look, the epilogue to my stuntman story was they eventually found a stuntman, one that they contacted. He didn't hit them back initially. And I said, go find that guy or anybody else, because this is not going to stand. And when they found the guy, at first I thought I made a mistake because I was 25 and he was 50 and had really thick Coke bottom glasses and was balding. And I thought, oh, maybe you get the Caucasian guy back. But then he put on the helmet, he took off the jacket, the guns came out, the one-armed pull-up happened, and he ended up being the best stunt climber that the young guys wouldn't do the stunts that he was trying to do. And one of the young climbers, young white guy, goes, that's how I know that guy. I have a poster of him on my wall. The point being, when you go looking for the talent, you can find the jewels. which leads into the conversation that you were just speaking about, David, that where Hollywood's about networking. We all know that. All businesses are about networking, but Hollywood is on volume 12 when it comes to being about networking. And if you don't bring in the talent that we're looking at, I mean, Robi, you've spoken to this a bit, then the Black actors never get a chance. And so, and this is true, again, as David brought up, of performers of color, so many underrepresented classes for women, for seniors, but today we're talking about Black actors. And there will be a series of panels detailing the issues of other races, performers of other races, of other underrepresented communities and their issues. But today we're talking about Black actors and we're talking about Black storytelling. So talk to me about the networking opportunities that, Robi, you've been able to give. And then I'm wondering if other panelists could talk to about, the opportunities that you were given by people that look like, who gave you that shot. But Robi, I was wondering if you could speak to how you bring people in and get careers started that way.
Right, great question. For me, it's constant and it's deliberate and intentional. I am blessed now to be working at BET, where we tell Black stories and use Black people to tell those stories, and are very careful about doing that and being authentic to it. But throughout the course of my career, so many of the projects that I worked on were not run by Black people. I didn't work with as many Black showrunners until I got to BET, quite honestly. So it was constant where I had to always remind those, be executives, producers, writer-producers, of what we were there to do and how we needed to always be careful about how we, made opportunities available to people. And not just always the same people, but keeping the door open for new faces, emerging talent, and, and such.
Right, and it's interesting because, I think that if you don't have people of color in that writer's room, in the producing realm, then you end up being in that spot of having to provide authenticity. I'm looking for people who can authentically play that, whereas folks over here may be looking at their idea of what that is. I wonder, Paris, if you could speak to that as a writer and a producer and a director. Do you find yourself sometimes when you are the only person of color in that room having to be the voice of authenticity, or having to put yourself into that position as being the Black director?
Honestly, rarely nowadays, because the people that I choose to work with are already at least halfway woke. And some are totally. So if you're in the Shonda Rhimes world, that's just a given. That's why Station 19 actually has a primarily minority cast, which isn't like a big thing, but it's 60% of the leading roles are people of color. So, it has been a while. Even on In Treatment, when I did In Treatment, there was no blowback other than, can you get me some stars? But you could still get Irfan Khan on In Treatment. You could still get, really interesting people there in that volume. But in the early days, I have to say, since there were no Black people around at all the characters were written to be white people.
Right.
So any character that you wanted to be something other than a white person, unless it was super specific to the scene that they'd be Black, like because they were a janitor, they would be white. And the writers would presume that all of these parts are white people. And I would say in the casting meetings, is this going to be open to anybody? And they'd say, we hadn't thought of that. Sure. You do occasionally in the older days, certainly. And now I guess for some people on some shows, it's more often the case. You just have to remind people that, the doctor does not have to be Asian. The janitor does not have to be an old Black man. The nurse does not have to be a woman. Yes, a disabled actor can be actually the scientist. You just have to keep reminding people over and over again.
Now, Paris, can you speak about your experience on City of Angels? City of Angels was the first medical drama with a predominantly Black cast. And so I would love to hear the trials, tribulations, and triumphs in getting that on air.
Well, I'm going to emphasize the triumphs. I'm going to try to do it short. So Stephen Bochco, huge producer, those of you who are younger may not remember, but Hill Street Blues, LA Law, NYPD Blue were hugely successful I had worked at NYPD Blue, and he came to me and said, I want to do a Black medical drama, and I want to do it with you. I know you're a writer. I think I need you to do this show. And so he got me and Nick Wooten, and we created the show City of Angels for CBS, which was going to have a primarily Black cast, and it's going to be set in a Black hospital in South Los Angeles. And then Stephen Bochco said, and I want Black writers in the room. This is in 2000, by the way, 20 years ago. So he hired Harold Sylvester, and he hired Diane Houston, and half the room was Black. And then he said, I want to get the best cast in the world. And I said, I don't know, you know, that's going to be very, very difficult to do, because I didn't know no better. And by the time we were done casting, I just made a list. Blair Underwood, Vivica Fox, Michael Warren, Hill Harper, Maya Rudolph, Gabrielle Union, Octavia Spencer, Viola Davis, Bokeem Woodbine, and every once in a while, Ossie Davis would come in, or Jim Pickens, or Niecy Nash, or Wendell Pierce. You know, it provided so many opportunities in this both for talent, and then the directors were Bill Duke and Kevin Hooks and Reggie Hudlin and Clark Johnson and Michael Schultz and Diane Houston too, and the crew is very diverse. What happened in the show though is every once in a while we would tell a hotbed story. I wrote an episode called Assume the Position where Dr. Ben, who was played by Blair Underwood, was stopped at a traffic light by a cop who humiliated him. And then later on in the episode, that cop has been shot, and Blair has to decide whether to operate on him or let him die. And it becomes an issue, because that's the way the show rolled. And the network didn't love that. You know, they didn't love that story, even though we've done a similar story on Station 19 right now. But Bochco said, you know, I'm giving you the show, and this is what it is. And he had the juice to do that. And so I guess the message is, if you care, and if it matters to you, bring Black people into the room. Tell those stories. Don't tell them alone. You can get voices that'll argue with you and be dissonant, and you could create opportunities. We create so many opportunities for great actors. I mean, Viola had done one show before this. Octavia had done very little, but it was an opportunity. You can create that if you're willing to do so. And I think if you look at the shows today, today's environment is so much more welcoming to that kind of experience that the opportunity is there. I mostly am hopeful. That's why I'm glad you're doing this panel, because I think this change is going to stick. I really do. I think people feel they cannot get away with doing it the way they used to do it in the olden times. And I see that everywhere. And every showrunner I've talked to is reevaluating their show in light of everything that's happened.
That's a really interesting point. That's where I wanted to go. I mean, I want to start off talking about where we've been, and then I want to get into where we are and where we're going. And you hit on it, Paris. I mean, look, 70s blaxploitation films. And then there was a Black wave that brought us Spike Lee, John Singleton, and the Hughes brothers. But both of those faded away. And so right now we've got, I mean, Shonda, Ava, Issa, Tyler, you know, they're all first names, they're all one name people. But the question is, and I'm going to throw this out to the actors, is this a wave or is this our new reality going forward?
Can I
have your thoughts, Yvette?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on what Robbie and Paris shared. I feel like we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a blessing when we're able to rise through the ranks and become, you know, a Paris Barclay or a Robbie Reed. But there is a platform we each have, no matter where we are in this industry, to be a gatekeeper of sorts. So my way of doing that is every time a new Black actress makes it into this industry, I find her. I introduce myself to her. I let her know that any information I have, she is welcome to. I give her my number, my email. I reach out to them on Instagram or Twitter. I want them to know that as they begin their journey, anything that I have learned is available to them. And that's what I can do. I'm getting into the area of producing and writing so I can also give them roles eventually. But right now I can give them information. And I can give them the name of a good hair and makeup person. I can tell them the producers that care about us and want to create safe environments for us. I can create a pathway for them to have an easier road than I had. And that is what we each can do no matter where we are. I think that there was a lie. I was going to say a myth, but it's a lie. There was a lie that was floated for many generations in this industry that there's competition and that there's only one that can make it through. And you better make sure it's you. And I think that kind of handicapped us more than the gatekeepers that were saying no, because we started fighting each other. We stopped sharing information with each other. We stopped coming out of an audition room and going, girl, there's 3 people in there. Now they're not going to do the second side. So make sure if they want an accent, make sure that helps each other. That helps. And if one person gets in, they can hold the door open for 20 other people to get in. But if we're in the waiting room like this and everything is tight, nobody's speaking, everybody hating on each other, you're not even in the right headspace or the soul space to go in and book the job. And this is something I want to say to my sister friends and my brothers that are in this industry, whatever your color. The roles that are for you have your name on them with a ribbon. There is nothing that anyone can do to take that role from you. Sometimes you're going to find out about an audition just so you can tell your friend because it was hers and she didn't have a way to get in. So I called my friend, girl, they looking for us. You better go on and call Robi Reed because they just had me in and they hear the sides and you go on in there and you book it if you can. Now, I'm going to try to keep it from you, but if you can get it, girl, it's yours. That's what we are supposed to do. We call each other brother and sister for a reason. Be a brother and a sister and help your family members out. There's enough to go around. There's enough to go around. That's all I got.
Speak on it. Sterling, Sterling, you want to say something on that?
Yes. No, Michelle, you first, please.
Sterling, go.
No, the only thing I was going to say is that in terms of the moment that we're experiencing right now, I think two things. Number one, I think you get to the universal through the specific, right? I think that Hollywood is recognizing that other groups of people can see themselves in Black stories, right? That you don't have to whitewash the story in order for white people to see themselves being a part of your story. Number two, the financial viability of Black stories. I think Black Panther sort of destroyed this idea that we don't sell overseas, right? Don't ever underestimate the power of a story well told, right? With Black people in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, people can see themselves in that story. And for that reason, I think it is continuing to move in a direction because people, I think, are curious and are interested to see all the different facets of what Black America, Black life can be. You know, there's no monolithic representation. You got Issa, you got Donald, even something like This Is Us, right? Where Dan always makes it a point, Dan Fogelman, our showrunner, has at least 3 writers of color in there at all times and is open to the feedback of his actors as well. Like, it's a joy to be a part of a true collaboration. So yeah, that's my little bit. Go ahead, Michelle.
Michelle, go ahead.
No, everything that you just said, everything that you all just said. I mean, Yvette, you know, I think about back in the day when I first started going up, my first calls would be to Anjanou Ellis and Gina Torres and my girls, and we'd be like, same exact thing. I was like, I'm gonna try to take it, but if I can't, you better get it.
Better get it.
That's right. And this is really about, you know, bringing each other up, bringing each other along, making sure we're all in the room. Just what Paris was saying, we need, like everybody, we need writers, we need directors, we need behind the camera, in front of the camera, we need all of that. And we need to reach over and help each other out. Sterling said something I was going to piggyback on, and I'm now lost at what I was going to say. But,
well,
you know,
go ahead, Michelle.
I was gonna say, even just like in my gig right now, Star Trek, you know, my castmates, Allison Pill, decided to, you know, get us all together and say, let's write to our producers and see what else we can do. Because, you know, we did some videos for them, right? You did some videos during this time. We all volunteered our time and did, you know, like we're all together or whatever. We volunteered our time for you. Now, what will you do for us? And what I loved is that we asked this and our producers came right back and said, you know what, we have created an internship called the Star Trek Command Training Program. Y'all can look it up and please apply because we'd love to have more diversity. And what it's about is to immerse anybody who wants to in their preferred field. We'll immerse you in the writer's room, the director's room, wardrobe. You know, you could shadow me as an actor, you'll get paid. But this gives you an idea of what this environment is. And the big picture of that is that we're creating a forum or an organization to reach over, bring more people of color in every room. And we can all do that, even if it's only, you know, just by making a phone call, like Yvette said, to call your friends and say, get in on this. Or if you have more power, creating an internship, creating an environment where you're actively inviting people in the room. And just to touch on this, and I know this is just for our story, but it's really important for us to remember that we need to include our LGBTQ people as well as our disabled artists, because there's like, they don't even have a big mouth like mine speaking up. So we need to make sure that they're represented and in the room as well.
Right.
I work with a lot of the performers with disabilities. They have some big mouths, but you're absolutely right. That,
Jason,
they
if
need
you're
as many
there, if
more.
you're there, Jason, baby, I know you got a good mouth. So yes,
Just
yeah.
before you move on, Jason, something that Yvette said, I just want to jump on right now. She's doing her own thing. She is
Yeah.
making her moves.
That's
She
right.
is creating her content and making movies, as is, they're over here in my picture. I don't know where they are here. As is Sterling. He's a producer. He's making, Regina King is doing her deal at Netflix. You know, Tyler Perry, who was an actor, became Tyler Perry because he just decided, I'm just going to make it. I'm just going to create the stuff that I want to see, and I'm just going to put it out there. So to all the actors who are out there too, a lot of actors can become very successful becoming creators. Look at Issa Rae. Look at the, you know, so many examples. Look at what Donald Glover's been able to do. So you should also look for opportunities in this environment to tell the stories you want to tell in your voice and become your own manager. You don't always have to wait for the sides. You can be making the sides. You know, you can be telling the story of your life or the story you want to tell.
I always tell people that the movie Tangerine was shot on iPhones about a block away from my kid's school and got critical acclaim in film festivals all across the globe. Shot entirely on iPhones. The technology is cheaper, and you can get this done for, it doesn't cost a mint to be able to tell your story now. Money just gives you bigger production values, but your story, to go back to Sterling's point before, having a very authentic, real story will make everybody recognize themselves in that, even if you're not a person of color, even if you're not LGBTQ, and it doesn't cost a lot anymore.
And I want to just shout out a Black-owned production company, Tridestin Studios. They work with BET a lot. They are the heart behind Always a Bridesmaid, my film, and they are completely Black-owned, and they're building it themselves. And so we can do it. We can do it. We don't have to wait for someone to give us permission. We can create opportunities for ourselves. So I wanted to just make sure I gave them a shout out as well.
And Jason,
absolutely. Yes, go ahead, David.
Let me just state for context, because this isn't obvious to everyone, but the business model of the industry is changing. And if we are disciplined and serious about taking what could be incremental change and really making that revolutionary change, we could take advantage of this business model switch. And the way to think about it is moving from a mass audience business model to a niche audience business model. So digital platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime, et cetera. Now these stories, in order for these companies to make money, these stories are reaching out to the next one subscriber. Not like the past, where each story was trying to reach a mass audience and therefore diluted and generalized, et cetera. Now, if I want Jason George or Jason George's child to become a subscriber, or to demand that Jason becomes a subscriber, then I'm looking for a story to attract that person. So there is a financial incentive to tell stories that are going to reach out to diverse audiences, because the business model now demands the next new subscriber. And I think that is going to provide opportunities that did not exist in the past for this fantastic storytelling that people are talking about. And so there are a lot of things converging right now. To your question, is this going to produce sustained change? There's a real opportunity for this to produce sustained change. We just have to take it along the lines of what people are saying.
And so let me ask this question. Have we reached that spot? We were joking about it when we were prepping for this call, but perhaps the biggest marker of success on the macro level will be when individual projects can fail. Because for so long, we made the prevailing assumption, and it's always an assumption, a self-fulfilling prophecy is what it is. Black films don't sell in China because you don't sell Black films in China until Black Panther goes and owns China. And now you know that that's a possibility. But so if a Black project fails, then we shouldn't do any more Black projects, was the self-fulfilling prophecy and wisdom that previously existed. Have we reached that spot yet, or is it in the near future when you can put a Black project out there and it doesn't make it impossible for the next Black project to get made? And I'll direct that to, I'll throw that to anyone who wants to jump on it, but I would love to hear the thoughts of the people who sit in the rooms, the Robi or Paris.
No, you can't fail yet. Is that the correct answer? No, we want to succeed as much as possible. So we want to be in a position of power and success, and failure, like they say, is not an option. I mean, we will fail and we will be accused of failing, but we won't have as many opportunities to fail as our mainstream counterparts. So we do still have to be better. We do still have to be more rigorous. We still have to bring the best cast we can get together. We still have to do our A game. You know, we have to find, you know, every opportunity to, and Sterling's right, the more particular our story is, the more it's going to move the greater number of people. So we have to stop believing we have to do this big story that everybody will like and do this little story that's in your heart and in your soul that touches everybody. And that's going to be, you know, if we can drive towards that, I think we have an opportunity for success. But, you know, we want to fail as little as possible. That's what I'm saying.
May I ask this? This is to what you just said, Paris. I was having a conversation with Casey Lemons not too long ago, and I was like, man, like, you came out with Eve's Bayou, right? And it received all this critical success, but folks didn't necessarily show up to watch it the way that you're hoping for. And I think Black audiences for a long time have been saying, like, let's see something different. Like, we don't have to see the same stories over and over again. But sometimes you make something that's different and you're like, how come y'all didn't come see it? I do feel like maybe that's changing more now. I think people are more open than, say, 20, 25 years ago to seeing different depictions of Black folks on screen. And so I'm hopeful that that also means that the marketing and advertising that goes into them is equal to the product that is being produced. Because sometimes if you don't get that money on the back, whatever the show is, like, folks won't come see it because they didn't advertise it appropriately.
You have to know it's there. You have to know about it in order to support it. And that's where the marketing comes in and the dollars spent. And I agree with you, Paris, that we still have to be excellent as much as we want to and can. And that the, you know, room for failure is still small, but we'll get to a space where we can fail as much as we succeed and the door will stay open.
Jason, can I ask Paris a question just on the point that he just made?
Please.
Because we have an audience now of folks, many of whom are striving to reach the level that you all have reached. Paris, to the point that you just said, we still don't want to fail. How do you mix that in with taking creative chances and creative risks? Because I'm trusting that you're not, and I may be wrong on this, but you're not sending the message, don't take the risk. Don't. So help people sort of understand how those two things live together.
When we're emerging and when we're starting out in today's world, Jason's right. You just have to make as much as you can. That's all the experience in your education, and that's going to grow your voice. But as you get into the commercial world, which is what I'm really talking about, then there's a new bar. And the new bar is you want it to be as successful as you can, even if it is to the niche audience that Sterling's talking about. When I'm telling people right now, if you haven't made a movie, if you haven't written a story, I'm really talking about getting ready for the revolution. Really, I'm not talking about being in the commercial marketplace. I'm talking about getting ready. It takes a few films, and I've seen this with short films. It takes a few films to make a good one sometimes. Everyone's first thing is not Eve's Bayou, you know? So it takes a little while. So I think now is the time while this revolution's happening, if you haven't done things, to do them, and then you'll develop over time, and hopefully we'll be there to encourage you to increase your skills and to bring more good people on. And when actors like the ones who are here volunteer to do that film, that gives it a certain amount of cred. All those things have to come together. But one thing I did want to say before I lost it, which is I still am really hopeful that it can stick. And the reason I'm hopeful that it can stick is because I think it's a lot of the Black Artists from Freedom letter, which I think all of us signed, or most of us did anyway, that came out last week. And what that expressed about a vision of freedom for artists was very moving to me. And I've never seen thousands of artists come together to agree on a vision of what the future is. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so hopeful, is because I'm starting to see that there's a way and that people are joining that way. And we're all looking down the street, which we never have before, more or less together. And that to me is very moving. And that's why I think this is so different. I mean, I'm old, I've been around, but I've never seen the beginnings of a revolution that looked like this one.
It's fascinating because I'm thinking in terms of, you know, what is the role? We've been talking a lot of the inside baseball for people who understand the industry and how things work inside. But for the average person in America, the content, the representation is what hits them. I mean, Sterling, you brought up Black Panther and you were fantastic in it. My kids were on a soccer team and the little white kid had the Black Panther symbol shaved into the side of his head. And that was one of those moments of great optimism for me. And he didn't, it wasn't a thing to him. And, you know, I mean, again, to take it to the macro, I remember taking the kids to see Wonder Woman, and every kid, boys and girls, all jumped up and were pretending to be Wonder Woman at the end of the movie. So I'm wondering if you all can speak on the role of storytelling in the greater movement that we're in right now. You know, I mean, I've had friends who wrote dissertations on a direct line between Morgan Freeman and Dennis Haysbert playing the president and Barack Obama, because it showed it and people didn't have a reaction. So I'm wondering if you've had experiences where you actually recognize the impact that what we do has on people out there. I mean, Michelle, you do Star Trek, and that's a world in which it's a future world where they're aliens. So the diversity has gone even beyond what we've got on Earth. And I wonder what it's like in that world.
Yeah, you know, I have to say, I feel so thankful and grateful to be a part of that organization, because Gene Roddenberry, he got it. He literally got it back in the day. I mean, I'm a biracial child, and my father, who was a civil rights activist, marched with Dr. King, you know, worked with Maya Angelou and Godfrey Cambridge to, you know, to get money so that King could march. My father was blacklisted from the industry for 10 years. You know, it was really important for him when we were growing up that we would watch shows that were inclusive, that showed all of us. He knew that if we didn't see ourselves represented, we would see that we were invisible in people's eyes. And Star Trek was one of those shows that my father would say, let's sit down and watch as a family. It was the first time I'd ever seen an interracial kiss. It was the first time an interracial kiss was ever on television in the first place. So to be a part of an organization like that, and it, you know, for those of you who've seen Rafi, my character, you know, I've made a point for her to have like this big, huge mane of curly hair on purpose. That was a discussion that I've learned from my last thing with the whole hair situation, that I had a conversation. I was able to say what my hair was going to look like. And I literally said, I want all those, you know, brown and black children who have crazy hair to see that in 2400 in space, we're still fucking there. Sorry, cursing, but you know, that we're still there and we're still represented. So you know, the fact that I didn't realize this, like as a child watching Star Trek, but as an adult being part of the show, I realized that all of our stories are about inclusion, exclusion, immigration, otherisms. I mean, they tell the stories and they get away with it because we put it under the awning of sci-fi, and we can go, those blue people suck, let's kill them. But we're talking about genocide. We're talking about issues that were happening right now. So yeah, I mean, I'm so thankful, I'm so grateful. And I will say on a side note, it was the first time in 30 years that I've been doing this business that I actually got a real, full-fledged, fleshed out, you know, valuable contribution character to the story. I'm not just delivering, you know, fodder for the other people to move the story along. I'm not just being the cop that's standing on the side and I'm strong and I have a low voice and I can, you know, be authoritative. Or
the black best friend.
Or the black best friend or the black concubine. I'm literally a flawed character, a haunted character, a character who is trying to do better, a human, a perfectly imperfect character. And under this awning of sci-fi, of Star Trek, this woman of color is allowed to explore, experience, share, and show the value of that type of a human being. And, you know, yes, thank you, Star Trek. And you know, and it's crazy to think that it took this long for me to get to an opportunity like that. It's like what Vi said when she first accepted one of her many awards. She said, you know, I'm getting this because I got the opportunity. We're all here. We just didn't get the opportunity. We're all here. We have stories and we have voices to tell these stories. We just need the opportunity.
I wonder if the other actors could talk about the roles that are crossing your desk. If they are full-fledged human beings, or are they changing? How have they changed over the course, and where do you see those roles going now? What's sitting on your desk? What are you reading? In the little bit of time you have to do anything outside of, each of you has like 8 jobs.
I get, it's been cool for me over the past 5 years is, for the first 15 years of my career, it was kind of like, please, sir, may I have some more? Like, whatever it is that you want to give me, Brown's gonna take it, Jack. And now all of a sudden I have some choice, which is a cool thing to do, and consideration in terms of what is the story that I think is important that I can lend my voice to. I want to just real quick talk about like media and news and like how people consume media and learn through the things that they see. Like your child, like the white kid being Black Panther, that's not going to be a thing. For us to dress up as Superman or Spider-Man back in the day, that's not going to be a thing, right? And I wanted to talk about specifically in the current, like, what is our responsibility with how we depict law enforcement, right? And because so much of what I've learned about law enforcement has been through what I consumed in the media. And like, how does that necessarily have to change in this moment? Paris, like you, NYPD Blue, when I was a kid, that was my show. I mean, Sipowicz, like Bobby Simone, that was my joint, right? But I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about like anytime Internal Affairs showed up, Rat Squad. It's like, I hate the Rat Squad. Like the police that are responsible for policing the police were like vilified, right? And I'm wondering like if we have an opportunity to sort of change that conversation and be like, accountability is necessary within this institution, that it should be something that's valued. The other thought that I had was regarding the blue wall of silence. And I'm only saying this because Jason, to your point about seeing President Palmer before we saw President Obama, like I think like there has something to do with it. If we can show this blue wall of silence being actively sort of torn down in a public forum, where a cop challenges a cop for nefarious execution of duty publicly, not like just back in the locker room when everything's like, hey man, you did something kind of foul. Like so that Asian cop who stood in front of George Floyd might have had an example of something that he hadn't seen before and be like, hey man, you need to stop. I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh, I love it.
It's an incredible point. And I mean, what do you all feel a responsibility in the roles that you choose, or if you have the opportunity to create? I mean, at the end of the day, we all have, every actor, regardless of level, has a choice to do a role or not do a role. It makes me think back to, again, going back in the day, Hollywood Shuffle, the great scene that every actor's experienced some version of, where gamesmanship, the crabs in a barrel you spoke to earlier, Yvette, where he's saying, are you going to play this role? This role is ridiculous. This role is a stereotype. But then he jumps up and runs in as soon as he gets the opportunity to do it.
But Jason, what about for you? I mean, you had a chance last season. We did a story where Ben Warren's character was stopped by a cop, and the cop made him go face down in the wet pavement. And this man is a doctor and a firefighter. And through the development of that story before we shot it, you stepped up and you had a lot of conversations with the showrunner. I mean, we're fortunate because Krista Baranoff is very open to that collaboration with the actors. It went back and forth through a lot of drafts. We talked about what is our responsibility to tell the truth of that moment that many of us have actually lived through, and also show our kids what the safe and smart thing to do is under that, and how you balance those things with who the character is. It was a fascinating conversation. It went on for about a week, but because you, the actor, I mean, admittedly you have the juice, but you chose to say, I'm not just going to do this. I have some thoughts, I have some feelings, I have some passion, and you had writers who are willing to listen to that. So, I mean, isn't it that each of you, when you get that material and you have a feeling it's going in a way that's not the way you want, it's not as juicy as Michelle's role on Star Trek, to stand up and just without being angry and all colored, as my mother would say, say, this is how I think this needs to go.
But you hit it, Paris. I mean, that was a beautiful conversation. One of those moments where I felt really proud to be in that workplace, because on the one hand, my thing was, this story needs to be told, so we need to figure out how to tell it right. Because there was a little bit of an impetus, I think, on some people. Well, if it's too hot, maybe we should just back off and not get into it, because we don't want to get it wrong. And I thought that's not an option in my mind, because having played Ben Warren for so long, I have a lot of, I'm from Virginia, a very purple state. So I know a lot of people who will say, well, what was that guy doing when the cop got him? And get into the sidetracking conversations. And I wanted to very specifically drive home an issue where one of the good ones, one that you know and like and know that he's not a problem, got this treatment. Because that's my personal experience. You know, when my personal experience, only time I've ever had a gun pointed at my head was by a police officer who pulled me out of a car that my white Jewish friend was driving. Because I fit the description of being black and gay tall. And, went black, don't remember the whole incident, but I need to put that truth out there to say, he saw me as a suspect. He saw my skin, he saw me as a suspect before he saw that I was vice president of student council, which is what I was. You know what I mean? He saw me one way. And so I thought that story was important to tell. And the key is, and I wonder if you all can speak about where we are in the industry at this point with people you work with, is having, if the people in power are not people of color, to not get defensive when we have this conversation. Because I think when they're not defensive, it doesn't matter if you've got the juice or not, you can have the conversation. Yvette?
Yeah, Jeremy Bronson, who was the creator and showrunner of The Mayor, came to mind. It was a show on ABC that was for Black leads. And he told me in the meeting that I had with him before I signed on, he said, I want you to know that I know that I don't know. And so I will never write something for you and hear from you that it is not authentic and not adjust. He made sure that our writer's room was half person of color and women. He made sure that there were people in the writer's room that looked exactly like me, so that there would be no doubt if something was written and we said, we wouldn't do that. He would listen to us. I think also it's important for us as Black performers. There's a thing called subtext. And this is what I had to learn as an actor. You have to learn as an actor anyway, but as a Black actor, I had to learn it for sure. Because there have been times that I have been given things to say that I can't change, depending on where I was in my career, but I could play it in the way that I felt a Black person would say that line if they were forced to say that line. So if I felt that there should be some remorse behind it or some sadness or some anger, I would color the line with what I felt I should be adding. I think that that's important to do as well as performers. I just feel like, personally, when you asked earlier about taking roles and how we choose our roles and what we're looking at now, I vowed when I came in this industry to never take a role that would make someone that looked like me, taking the ride in my shoes, that it wouldn't make them feel bad. So I've been a Black woman my whole life. I've been a natural haired woman most of my whole career. I've been a woman of a certain size at different points in my career. I don't want anybody that looks like anything I just described to leave out of a movie theater or turn their TV off feeling bad about themselves because I had to get a check. Now that's a choice I have made. I want to always be a source of upliftment and encouragement. And even if I'm playing a character that's not great, there has to be some comeuppance or something. There has to be a lesson in their journey so that we as a people can feel like, Yvette, she did all right for us, because it's not me. And until you start realizing that your walk in this industry, and it sucks that it has to be this way. Black people know we are the beacon for everybody. You stand in that position and you are the totem for everyone. So I hate that it has to be that way, but that's what it is. And I've chosen to make sure that my people can see a good version of themselves when they tune in to see me. And I will not sell them out for my bank account. And that's the choice I made.
And then I want to ask you a question to that. Now, first off, bless you. But has that hindered you at points? Obviously, you're still where you are in your career. You've had a phenomenal career. So the ultimate message is you can be proactive and still have a phenomenal career. But I wonder if you can speak on those difficult moments when it was a hard decision to make.
This is what's funny to me. Anybody that see my Twitter knows that I don't shy away from anything that I know is right. And I have said, and I say it with I'm not even joking, McDonald's is always hiring.
It's true.
And I'm also a legal secretary by trade. So, but I promise you, I will be like, would you like salt on your fries? If I have to stop being fully me, if I have to stop speaking up about what is right, if I have to sell out my people to get ahead, I will be like, do you want salt on your fries? And thankfully, every company that has ever employed me, I have never had someone say, Yvette, can you be just a little less Yvette? None of them. And I've worked for Disney and NBC and ABC. I've worked for all of them, and none of them have ever taken me aside to have that conversation. And I hope they know, if they're watching, you don't want to have that conversation with me. You don't, because it will be a goodbye. I don't care about fame. I don't even care about money. As long as I got enough to put some bread in a toaster and take care of my daddy and my dog, I'm good. I'm not chasing all that stuff. And I'm saying you have to decide at some point, are you going to be on the right side of history? Are you actually one of the helpers? Mr. Rogers talks about being one of the helpers. I endeavor to be one of the helpers. And that means you got to put your own needs aside to be there for other people. We in the fight of our lives. We can't be patty caking our way through this mess because we want to buy a new dress or some lip gloss. What are you doing? Stop it. Get in the fight.
Okay,
That's my girl.
that's the t-shirt. That's the t-shirt coming up. You can't be patty caking this stuff. That's,
Bread in the toaster.
Bread in the toaster. Just two slices.
Would you like fries? Would you like fries?
Would you like salt on those
Salt
fries?
on the fries.
Why, yes, I am Yvette Nicole Brown. Would you like ketchup?
That's right.
I mean it too. Y'all know I mean it.
I know you do.
Let me ask this question. David White, I'm coming to you. What can SAG-AFTRA as an institution do to help facilitate this place that we are at now and where we all hope and believe that we're going?
Yeah, we can do a lot, but we can't do everything. And so we're always trying to find that line, right? So we can offer platforms for people's voice to come through authentically, like this platform right now. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm receiving messages already from folks who are listening because this is resonating as a real conversation. And for anybody in the industry, we know how hard, how lonely, who am I to think that I can actually be successful in this industry? We know what that period of a career is like. And I remember my wife, when she was starting off as a writer, just being able to go to an event like this and to hear from other people who say, girl, I got you. You're good. Because you're talking about the story like what Yvette was just talking about, like what everybody here is just talking about. She would live on that for weeks as a reminder that she belongs here, that she can make it, etc. So we can offer platforms. We also have a range of actual institutional bodies, whether that's committees or the staff departments that we have, etc., that are looking to understand the space and to then advance the ball. So those can be, again, conversations. Those can be programs that we have where we are connected to studios to provide opportunities in front of casting directors, etc. Those can be moments when we are bringing people together to understand what they have and how they can take their resources and move it forward. So we have that. We also have actual programs like our relationship with historically Black HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. Somebody's going to get me for not having that just right on my fingertips, right? But HBCUs, we have relationships with, there's a school in New York, now also in Los Angeles, called the Ghetto Film School. That is the name that the youth selected, by the way, because that's how they wanted to be represented, to bring actual mentoring opportunities into the industry. That HBCU, there's an entertainment industry-wide program that we have. We started that in the boardroom of SAG-AFTRA. That's where we introduced it. That's where we brought in studios and agencies, etc. So there's a lot that we can do as an institution. I see Gabrielle pop up. You might want to add to this, but by being focused on it and by using institutional resources, we can elevate and provide space. We can establish programs. We can actually provide sponsorship to other programs that are going on out there. Jason, you, Sterling, I believe you as well. Paris, you might be a part of Icon Man. There are other groups like that that are elevating the voice, in that instance, of Black men. In other instances, for Black people, for other people of color, for other groups that have been historically marginalized. By sponsorships, we're providing resources, etc. So there's a lot that we can do. In a moment, I'll just say, in a moment like this where we have real, unique, historic social, economic, and political disruption going on in the streets. We also have members who want us to be involved in all of that. So it's also important to say that we have things that we can do, and it is important that we do those things with excellence and that we move those things forward, and that we not make the mistake of trying to do everything or pretending that we can do everything. So our job is to walk that line and bring what we can to the table.
Okay. Shows
Did everybody
you
hear that?
apparently-
They better start it
apparently
again. They better start it
That's
up
sad.
again.
I think
We're
Siri
just
just
getting
told us
started.
that Siri just shut down the show. Siri canceled us, apparently.
The show is on, it's just not being recorded, so you guys go for it.
Oh,
We're here.
Nobody cancels
So
it.
now it's a live show. Now we're just live. It's no longer TV. Now it's stage.
That's
Via
right.
Zoom. This has been an incredible conversation. We're nowhere near done. But I do want to we have a large audience that is watching us. Hundreds of people, I think thousands, well over 1,000 have been watching. And so I want to let them have a chance to get in. And since we ended up kind of talking about the union piece and going forward, I'll let one of our union leaders actually get the first question. Andrea Lyman, the New England local president, asked this question, and I'll throw this out to the group. What are some of the differences that you've noticed working on a set predominantly led by African Americans, such as Shonda Rhimes, versus the predominantly white cast or director or producer shows and films where you've been the only person of color? What is the difference in those experiences, if anybody wants to speak on that?
Well, I'll just say, just having just done Bad Hair, oh my God, you guys, oh my God. It was the best experience. I mean, I walked into that dress, hair and makeup, and there was smiles all around. They were like, sit yourself down, honey. I mean, it was, and Justin is amazing. It was probably just such a fulfilling, nurturing, no stress, collaborative experience. And I'm sad that it can only be on a set that's predominantly Black. I don't understand that. I feel like it should be in all of the sets. I don't know why I have to have trepidation when I walk onto a set that's not predominantly Black, but it's a beautiful experience. And I'm sure my brothers and sisters here can tell you that, like, when we're all in a group together, we just happy. We're just so happy that we're all fucking employed and we're there and we're doing something and we're creating and, we're supportive of each other. And it's a beautiful feeling. It's a beautiful experience, and unlike any other.
Yeah, I see it myself as a respite. I feel like, and I don't want to act like my journey in Hollywood has been horrible. You know what I mean? There's one or two on various sets that have been difficult, and you deal with that, and there's struggles that you have to deal with, but we'd have to deal with it if we were working in corporate America or wherever we were. So it's not even unique to Hollywood. I think what Michelle is speaking of is the same experience I had, working on Girlfriends, or I had working on Dear White People, or I had working on Always a Bridesmaid. There's a safe space zone that is created when Black folk can come together and just let it all down and not have to be careful. And, my biggest issue has always been in life, because y'all know, everybody that knows me or seen me, I'm very passionate and I'm very, very focused, and I speak what I call a spade. But it's passion. Never, I didn't get that. But it is always passion and not anger. I love people. Anybody that's ever met me knows I love people. I love all people. So it's always frustrating when my passion is seen as, oh, Yvette's mad. I'm very rarely mad. It's not even worth getting mad about this stuff at this point. We've been Black in America, everybody on here, at least 30 years. Now I'm 32 myself. We've all been, okay, don't laugh. Everybody's laughing. Don't laugh at that. We all been Black a very long time. So we know what this is. There's no surprise when there's a microaggression or macroaggression. We're tired of it, but we know what it is. So there's no anger that bubbles up. When there's a knee on someone's neck, that makes me angry. You trying to touch my hair when I don't want you to, that's just what happens, So we need to understand the difference between what has been perceived to be the Black experience and what is actually the Black experience. And when you're a Black person on a set with other Black people, it's the real. And that's refreshing to just go, I can just be me. I don't have to explain myself 50 times. I can just, that's a great feeling.
There's a sense of belonging. Like this group of people was assembled specifically with you in mind. The space was meant for you, other than like, this is a space that was created and you just so happen to get a chance to have an opportunity to be there. So if you have to bring your clippers so that you can get your Corona fade together, because that's why it's as tight as it is, because Brown's got experience, You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Jason's not good at it, which is why Jason's wearing a hat.
I knew that. I knew the hat was on purpose.
It's real.
I understand, but I'm saying, like, when all these other things, and it's far cry from what the ladies have to experience, but like, you do these things so that you take it out of their hands because you know it wasn't set up with you in mind. They're like, well, how are we going to pay for one barber when you're the one guy? It doesn't make financial sense to us, or whatever. But when everybody looks like you, it's like, oh, this was set up for me. Like, come on, man, you want to get a fade? Like, how you want it? Like, the languaging is even different. Whereas people will approach you with the little peanut thing, they're like, you're about to cut your hair. I'm like, don't touch my hair. Like, so like, there's just that sense that like it was established with you in mind. It's like when you go to DC to the Martin Luther King Museum. It's like, this had me in mind.
Yeah.
Right? It's a powerful feeling when an institution is set up, because it doesn't happen often at all.
Yeah, it does not. But I'll just say this, because Shondaland is a real place. There are unicorns there and fairies and everything like that. And what's great about it is that the showrunner current showrunner of Grey's Anatomy and Station 19, Krista Burnoff, is not a woman of color. But she makes a point to create a diverse room, and she embraces that diversity and is open to the conversation constantly. And the result is, and I think I'll speak to Station 19, which is where I live most of my time these days. Paris is a huge piece of it. I mean, it's kind of the border between what you are talking about and is that the showrunner, the big dog on the show, is not a person of color. A lot of the crew, I don't even know if I could say it, the majority of the crew, it might still be majority white, but there is so much diversity and so many people in positions of power that you get that sensation. I feel closer to what I felt when I was on Barbershop, when you're doing projects that are, that spoke to people that look like you. So even though it is still not predominantly Black production in terms of the people that staff it, there's still, you get that comfort level. And I've never worked with more women directors, more directors of color, more directors of photography that are women or people of color. The list goes on. And by the way, they're all ballers. They're all ballers at their job. And it's one of those things where you say, where have y'all been my entire career? I've been out here for 20 years, and I've somehow never, with the exception of two projects that were quote unquote Black projects, I'd never worked with a director of photography that was Black, or a director of photography that was anything other than a white male. But we were speaking just a moment about certainly you were saying beautifully about the experience of that comfortability. We're breaking apart the monolithic idea of Black folks. And I would love for Robi to touch on this one a little bit, but also especially the actors. Somebody sent in a question. This is from Anonymous, not the hackers, but somebody who didn't want their name out there. You talk about networking as part of Hollywood. As a Black actor, if you're not comfortable with code switching, if you, as has often been leveled at me, if you talk white is the phrase that's gotten thrown at me a bunch of different times. And I would say, because my mom's a teacher and the back of her hand hurts. Then the notion of networking can be an inauthentic way to navigate through the system. There seems to be an appeasement of white Hollywood. Please address. I wonder if you all can speak on that conversation, both in terms of the roles you're asked to play. Have you ever been asked to make it a little more, how do I say, and this is where the person always gets a little nervous, as they're saying, can you make it a little more
urban.
Less urban.
Yeah,
more
urban. Less urban.
Sassy.
Yeah. The code words. I wonder if actors can speak on it, but I also would love Robi to speak on that as sitting in the room as these notes are being given and that sort of thing.
Robi, before you go, I just want to make sure everyone realizes we have 5 minutes. So I know people are going to want to say a bunch of stuff. Let's just pay attention to time. Sorry, Robi.
Actually, David, thank you for that. And I'm going to say, yes, so we'll be doing this conversation. Clearly, it's only the beginning, just to remind everybody, but thank you.
Yeah, so just real quick, of course, I've been in the room, I've been in several rooms, many that, where I was the only one, and then some and many where there's all of us that look like me. And I've had that come up where, you know, talent has been asked to do something a little more, you know, this way or that. But what I would say to the actors that are watching, you have to do what's comfortable for you and what you can live with, go home with, and just really be okay with. And if it sets right with your spirit, then do that. And if it doesn't, then don't. And the other thing is, if you didn't get it right the first time, do it again. You know, don't leave the room and, darn it, wish I had. Just do it. It's your moment. That's what
Can I say just one thing? I just feel like I haven't properly given Robi Reed the flowers that she deserves on this here Zoom. She is someone that finds you. If you are a Black actor in this industry, Robi Reed will find you. She will give you an opportunity, and it is your job to rise to the occasion. I say this with no hyperbole. If there was no Robi Reed, there would be no Yvette Nicole Brown anywhere. She and Mara Brock-Akil took a chance on me when no one else did. I had no agent and no credits, and she put me on a sitcom with a 2-episode arc. So I need to always, when I'm in a room with her, let her know I see her, I'm grateful for her. And if you want to be in this industry and you have some melanin in your skin, you find you some Robi Reed. Find her. That's what I got.
One of the favorite jobs I've ever done in my career, Robi cast me in. I tried to quit a job to do the job that Robi Reed was trying to cast me in. Sterling?
Just addressing the question, I think Robi's answer is really great. You have to be authentic to yourself. I would say in terms of code switching, that there's a way in which I talk to my moms that is different than the way in which I talk to my boy, which is different than the way in which I talk to my wife. So it would be inauthentic for me to speak to my mom the way that I speak to my boy, or vice versa. So I keep that in mind. With each interaction, there is a way to have shared communication that is most effective. And all you're looking for is for effective communication. On the flip of that, I've seen Ryan Coogler speak to everybody exactly the same way. From me, Kevin Feige, whatever. It's like, yo, what's up, Kev? How you doing, man? Yeah, you're thorough. That was good, man. Yo, on this next one, let's try and do it, you know, change up a little bit, da-da-da. And so, like, that is authentic to him.
If
right?
y'all don't know, that was a very good Coogler impersonation.
Thank you very much.
It really was.
Like, he is authentic to him. So I say, like, whatever it is that you can look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I was myself today and I did not compromise myself. That is the way you should negotiate this work.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right.
You know what? I actually, we are about out of time, but I will say that is a phenomenal point to end on in this conversation that we're trying to keep going and bring into Hollywood. Authenticity is the point. Authenticity for yourself as a performer, and bringing that authenticity to the roles that we play. And what we're asking for from Hollywood is to give us the opportunity to back us up in make it more authentic, which means we need to have people in the rooms writing this material, people in the rooms that are greenlighting material, that get that there's authenticity, and by getting specific, you'll get to the universal. Because, you know, when it's there, it's there. It's Big Fat Greek Wedding, Barbershop all came out around the same time, and you don't have to be Greek and a woman or Black to see those movies and see your family, to see where you get your hair done. Everybody in America all recognize those places. I want to thank all of the panelists for being a part of it. This has been a fun conversation. I want to spend another half hour because we have more questions from the audience, but we're out of time. I want to thank our union for putting this platform together to make sure this conversation is happening. And I want to thank everybody that was watching. For if you were watching this, it means that you get that there's a conversation to be had. So go forth and continue to have this conversation with the people that you deal with in the most positive manner. With that, I'll leave it to President Carteris to close out. Gabby, I think you may be muted.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I have to say, first of all, I am just moved by everybody. Thank you, Jason, for really a beautiful moderation of this panel. You all spoke in such a profound way. This is a conversation on race and storytelling, and it's, again, a first on a series regarding race and storytelling. God knows there are so many stories to be shared by so many different people with different backgrounds. All of us can use our voices when we work together. Those people out there who have any kind of influence on the set, no matter your color, you can actually make a stand, and you can ask for inclusion. You can ask for the idea that we all need to be represented there. You can call it out, you can do it with respect, and you can change. We need to make systemic change. This is the time for us to do it. We can try to really fight racism and discrimination. We must, we can, we will. I know we can do it together. And I am so honored to be here with all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Really wonderful. Look forward to seeing everybody again.
Great conversation, you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Great job.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Much love, guys. Thank you.
Take care,
Much
everybody.
love.
Awesome.